Okay, so one of our big challenges was getting the torch tracking working. Not only did we need to track the position of the torch in 3D space, but we also needed to track its orientation, in other words, its vertical and horizontal rotation in space. We wanted to use our Kinect tracking sensor, as we're already using that for a whole lot of other data points in the space. And we also didn't want to use additional hardware that required maintenance and could break. We initially started with using AR marker tracking with the Kinect color camera. However, the frame rate of the color camera is limited to about 15 to 30 FPS and closer to 15 FPS in lower light conditions. So it became clear that it wasn't really appropriate for robust, real-time, accurate tracking. So then we put that aside and decided we wanted to try and make use of the point cloud data that comes from the depth camera in the Kinect. But to process the whole room with 3D point cloud data in real time is extremely processor intensive. So we first started with color tracking. So we had a flat plane of color for the torch, and we would isolate the space we wanted to do our 3D point sampling on by looking at the color. This worked really well when we could control the lighting conditions of the space. However, we have a multitude of different colors and projections changing from morning to night, so we quickly realized that this was no longer feasible. We had at least solved our plane tracking, in other words, determining the orientation of a plane using the point cloud library. So with that, we just needed a way to robustly and accurately and reliably isolate the torch tracking. That's when we decided to use omnidirectional reflective tape, and there was quite a lot of back and forth with the product design team on what would be the ideal size and actual shape of it so that we could track it at various angles. We eventually settled on a dome-shaped object, and all of that together allowed us to very accurately, through all different kinds of lighting conditions, determine the orientation and position of the torch in space. Additionally, one of the other challenges was capturing the whole tracking area in a cohesive manner, as we had 7 networked Kinect cameras in space, each with their own unique orientation, and we wanted to be able to account for the differences of each of the Kinects and also have a full picture of the space. So we wrote a custom point cloud calibration app that allowed us to actually sample all the points in the space and use that to determine the orientation matrices of each Kinect. And we used those as transforms on any of the data that came from each of those Kinects to build up a full piece of what was happening in the space and to easily understand when we were having overlapping areas reliably. One of the biggest highlights for me working on this project was the fact that I really got to jump in on something so massive and see it from start to finish, and the finish being actually in Miami, working on a construction site, seeing a building moving from halfway finished to fully finished, and like having a fully functioning interactive installation that kids were just queuing up to come play with.